I'm Tanya Rosanna Stalewski, and I've always been passionate about languages, as you know, probably from my page. My studio, LinguaCom, runs a number of language learning projects. And in the series of broadcasts, we're going to discuss how languages impact our lives and interact with our job, family, lifestyle in general. I really can't wait to start. And I've got a bunch of fascinating people to introduce to you. So just before we start, I guess I should say a few words about our studio. I'm very glad that my assistant Leonard, he is here with us today. We help professionals working in a variety of fields improve their English and prepare for tests such as TOEFL, IELTS in a way that suits them. As I firmly believe that there's no one way of learning a language. We have several available formats such as live sessions, co-workings, guest sessions, and presentation sessions. So if you want to learn more about us, here's our website. It's LinguaCom Studio. You're welcome to visit if you like. Some of our students are actually going to be online with us today for a Q&A session that is going to happen in the end of this broadcast. So if you're here with us, please stay muted until the Q&A, but you're always welcome to use the chat to ask your questions if you have any questions. Okay, now we are here with our guest, and one of my students, Alexander, is here. That's great. So welcome to our second broadcast. Okay, so our guest today is Salomon Meghnagi. Welcome to be our guest. And now I guess we're ready to start. And I just want to say a few words that when I first met Salomon, it was on a dinner party. And we started chatting about different things. And in the beginning, I was very much impressed with how many things Salomon has experienced or, traveled. And then it turned out that he also speaks seven languages. Something like this. Yeah. Okay. And also works as an emergency medical technician, studies law, does fundraising, also does martial arts, so many things. So I decided it's definitely a good reason to invite him to talk to us today. Okay. Salomon, I guess maybe it's enough for me, enough talking for me. And I would be really happy if you, first of all, I'd like to ask you a little bit about your name. Okay. When we met, you mentioned that you are very, very specific about how to spell your name. And it doesn't matter where you live. You want people to write your name correctly. And could you tell us a little bit about the origins of your name?
Yeah, first of all, my name is Salomon Meghnagi, where Salomon is like, King Solomon.
Yeah.
And Meghnagi is a place in Libya. Actually, my father was born in Libya in 1941. Yeah, he's a little bit older. And my mom, just to start with some funny things, there is a gap an age gap of 25 years between my father and my mother.
Yeah.
Just to start.
Okay.
So Meghnagi is a place in Libya, and that's my family name. It's actually come from England. It was Mackenzie.
Oh, okay.
Turned to be Meghnagi, and there are lots of stories about this surname. And actually, we don't even know because there are letters that in Arabic you have sounds that you cannot spell in English with the Latin alphabet. And then in Hebrew alphabet, and then so everybody changed this name. So I can actually put my hands on fire and tell you from where my surname comes. But about my name, I can sure tell you that like Solomon, it's like King Solomon or Shalom in Hebrew.
Okay.
And that's all. I also have a second name, and a little bit thing about my name. My mother's surname was Rosenberg. Levi Rosenberg, and her family was from Germany. And when I was born, I the first one, and then I had a brother. And my brother take the surname of my mother, Rosenberg, because no one remained from her side, no male remained from her side because of the Second World War.
Oh.
So we want to continue with our surname.
Well, that's again. So you mentioned something that you had this decision of which surname to take, your mother's or your father's, or is it correct?
They took this decision for us.
Oh, I see. Okay, so as a short name, how do you prefer to be called? Like, your
Salomon.
friends, just Salomon. Okay.
It's the easier way.
I see. So now let's talk a little bit about the languages that you speak. Right now, please don't tell us where you learned them. We're going to reveal that a bit later. Just tell us the list. Okay, what languages you know and to which level? Like, what is the level of knowledge? Proficiency.
Okay, so I have proficiency in Italian, English, and Hebrew. I'm also having Spanish and Latin and ancient Latin and Greek, ancient Greek.
Okay, so Latin and do you mean like medieval Latin and ancient Latin, Greek, modern Greek and ancient Greek?
Different. It's real different. We can talk about this later.
Sure.
And obviously you can understand that knowledge of Latin, especially it make easier for you to learn and to understand languages like French and
Portuguese, maybe also Romanian and some other languages as well. But what about, tell us a little bit about Russian. You mentioned that you speak Russian.
So, I have to speak about my family.
Oh, yeah. Wait a second. Not there yet. You do know some Russian. How would you say, like, do you know it or do you know it just a little? Or if you had to go to Russia today, would you be...
Just a little? No. First of all, the best way to learn a language is to move to the country. So it's like, for the moment, it's like a dead language. I can understand, like news, like I see some people maybe speak Russian. So I can name RTL Planeta, Первый канал.
Первый канал. Okay. Do you watch Первый канал? Oh my God.
RTL Planeta, Planeta Sport, whatever you want.
I see. Okay.
From I used to listen to watch the Iralash when I was a child.
Iralash, okay. Whoa.
I can see that some people here share my personal experience.
Absolutely. Okay.
To start about my Russian, I have to make some spoiler.
Oh, yeah. Now I think we're ready to, So I guess you've named so many languages and there's no way you just, sat down and said, okay, today I'm going to learn ancient Greek, or today I'm going to, today is my Russian day, or something like this. So there's no other way of talking about the languages in your life, I think, without the history of your family. And I promised everyone that we're going to go a little bit into, the history in general, because there's some changes that you mentioned about your family that were related to historical changes. So now I think I'm going to show the slides that you sent to me, and we're going to discuss a little bit of your family history, right? Okay, we actually made a map to make it a bit...
all this happened in something like 50 years.
Yeah.
So,
Whoa.
The first thing you can see that all the ways lead to Rome.
Oh, the what? Oh, Rome.
All the ways
we see
Rome.
Rome. Yeah. Okay.
Not
all the ways lead to Rome. Yeah. Все дороги ведут в Рим. Okay, that's right.
So
it looks like this.
Yeah, it will look like this. So my family, from my mother, they're from Germany, and then they moved to what was called the Soviet Union, and they lived in Latvia, and then they moved because of the war. Because of the Second World War, part of them moved to Baku, Azerbaijan, next to the Iranian border. And then during the period of the fall of the Berlin Wall, they succeeded to move to the States, part of the family. And then after the fall of the Soviet Union, all the family moved to the States. And then my mother started to work there, and she worked for Chanel. And during her job, because of her job, she met my father.
He also worked for Chanel?
No, he was born in Libya.
Okay.
And Libya, as you know, was an Italian colony. And in few years, it changed so many languages and so many countries who took the rule over the country. From Britain was English, from France, the States, Germany, everyone was there.
Can I just stop here for a second? Because I prepared a little historical reference, because I'm not sure, it has to do with the world wars in the 20th century. So I decided to stop a little bit, and I just, open a Wikipedia about Libya. And you can see here that it actually was under Italian influence you see here, Libya was involved in the Barbary wars of the 18th and 19th centuries. Ottoman rule continued until the Italo-Turkish War, which resulted in the Italian occupation of Libya and the establishment of two colonies, Italia-Tripolitania and Italian-Cyrenaica. Okay, so this is like the early 20th century. So naturally, I guess the languages there were also mixed, Arabic, I guess Italian, I don't know what else, but yeah. And then later it became it was one of the major scenes of the Second World War. The English army intervened, and there was a place where there were big fights between the Nazis and the British army. So, it says right here.
What will happen?
So, what about your father? Yeah, tell us about your father a little bit, because he was born in 1941.
Yeah, in an Arabic country under Italian rule. So at school, they used to study Italian. It was the language. No one cared about studying Arabic. Obviously, he studied Arabic because of all the population spoke Arabic, but the state language was Italian. It was a colony.
Okay.
And then the German failed to lose Africa, with Africa crops and Rommel. And Libya, because of its oil fields, was divided between England and States and French.
That's right.
So the third language there moved to be English. And what happened there was that people living there had both Italian citizenship and the Libyan one. And till now, Libya was ruled by a king.
By a king?
Yeah. Okay. You know about Gaddafi? You heard about him?
Yes. Absolutely, sure.
He took the rule from the king. We are about 19th, and because first of all, I have to say that I'm explaining you about Libya, and then if we go on about the Jewish Libyan, because Jewish Libyan was also subjected, they suffered not only from the colonialism, but also from the Arabic pogrom in 1948, because after the establishment of Israel, and all the wars in 1956, 1967 was the last one. As we know, in 1967, most of the Jewish lived all the Arab countries.
Yeah, there was a massive movement of the Jewish families from the African countries. That's right.
And my father was one of the last Jews who left Libya. He lived in 1967 when the situation was intolerable, and because Libya was an Italian colony, and they moved to Italy.
In 1967, so he at that time he was able to live as a citizen in Italy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is how you met your mom.
Oh, we met her mother. So, part of the family of my mother lived in the Soviet Union, and maybe some of you know, Jewish living the Soviet Union moved to Vienna and then to Italy, because some moved to Vienna too, and then they were convinced or not to move to Israel, and the ones who were not convinced that the Sachnut or the Jewish agency didn't succeed in convincing them to move to Israel, they moved to Italy because the United States didn't want to receive them, and they had to wait for visas in Italy. That was one of the first meetings.
Okay.
My father had experience in that because in 1967, he was responsible for all the Libyan refugees who moved from Libya to Italy. So when this happened with the Jewish from Russia, he tried to help in the best way he could. I can tell you, if someone here experienced something like this, heard about it was a totally different era, and there was no WhatsApp or cell phone.
Of course. Well,
as an example, in Libya, the government decided to expel all the Jewish, and they have big families, and they forced them to move one by one. So you lose contact with your family. You can think about a father. My grandfather, he had 7 children, and everyone moved alone with no phones. You don't even know where he's going. So just try to believe. So the first thing that my father think about the Russian Jews was just to help them, because he really knew what happened and to avoid them to experience what he experienced on his own life. Then he started meeting a lot of Jewish Russians who didn't want to move to Israel because they had to wait for receiving visa to the United States. United States used to be very strict on giving visa to all these Russian people because
to the refugees.
Yeah. Because they didn't want to recognize them as refugees, it was like called refusnik, and they remained without citizenship because they were taking the Russian one. So it's another problem.
Okay. Well, so we kind of see the whole story of Russian and like not just like the migration in the 20th century reflected in one family. One family split into so many parts, and then your mother's family split also into several parts, moving from country to another country, waiting for visas, waiting for this and that. Well, it's like a miniature of story of the 20th century, I must say, something like this. Okay, so
and then at the end in 1994 I was born. Something happened.
Okay.
and just to believe, I was born in a house where my father speaks Arabic and Italian, my mother English and Russian and Yiddish if you want.
Okay.
And then we have to start school at the age of 3. Start reading, learning the alphabet, the Italian one. And my mother decided to study with us because we were coming back from school and asking her for help doing homework.
And she didn't know.
So she had to learn Italian. She learned it with us on our books. And at the same time, she kept contact with her family in English. And when I used to go to sleep, my father was just telling me stories in Arabic.
Good night stories and
on TV you listen to from Russian war movies to Italian news and British one. And when we start high school in Italy, you have to learn Latin, and you can choose to learn also ancient Latin, obviously, and a second European language. So you have to learn Italian, English, and another language between French, Spanish, or Germany. Most of the people choose French because German is too difficult for people living with a Latin background because it's a more Anglo-Saxon language, and Spanish is too easy. You can learn it alone. So
so French.
We want French.
Okay. Wait a second. When you're talking about bedtime stories, actually, you sent me this song, and I was just wondering, you mentioned that when you learned how to read and write, this was the song that you learned with your mother?
Actually, I learned to read and write in Italian with my mother.
Yeah, so let me just play the song for just a second, for a few seconds.
A come avventura, B come bravura, C come canaglia che commetterà in quest'ora, D come diamante, E come elefante, F è il forfante che in galera porterò, G c'è tanta gente, H non c'è niente, immediatamente alla L passerò, L è l'animale, M è meno male, N è già Natale, tanti doni porterà.
So these are all the letters, right?
The main problem of this song is that you would expect a song like A, airplane, and B, banana. And they choose all the difficult words having Italian.
Exactly, difficult words.
So my mother really expected to learn it faster than us. It didn't happen.
Okay.
Yeah, the luck is that English and Italian have the same letters, but it's totally a little different way of reading them. And the Italian grammar is also...
I see.
Another thing, because she was adult, it was easier to her, because we'll talk about that later. But after you learn the first language, it's always, when you continue to learn more languages, it's always easier because you can make more connections and you know how to learn.
And also make us, like, you have associations, you have some, images in your mind that help you remember things. I think, definitely. You also mentioned that you took French in school, and you also had to learn English, obviously, and the classic languages like Latin and Greek. So for how many years did you do that?
Well, we learned Latin and ancient Greek for 8 years.
For 8 years. Okay. Okay, I thought
And
that,
the bigger problem of our teacher was to explain us why we have to learn Latin and Greek. And I can tell you that I moved to Israel in 2014, and now I'm studying, and they talk about Socrates and Platon, and they try to speak about them in Hebrew, a poor language.
So you pull out a book in ancient Greek and say, no, this is not exactly what he meant.
Literally, knowing a language, that what we were told at school, that if you want to understand a period, you have to learn this language. You cannot study ancient Greek in English. You cannot even understand them. I have an example, like in war, they have a word they used to say during a fight, just used to write how the dead body was found on the field. Like on his back, on his belly. And what does it mean? It means that if he was found on his belly, he died escaping because he was hit on his back. And if he died on his back, he's a hero, or at least he tried to fight and he was defeated.
So when you read a book in ancient Greek, you suddenly find a line there. And this person was found on his back as one word. This is just one word. Yeah. Okay. And actually what they mean is that he was a hero.
Or at least he tried to fight. He didn't escape.
Or try to fight. Okay. And sometimes you can find a name followed by he was found on his belly means that he was a kind of coward. This is what you mean?
Because he was hit on the back while escaping from the field.
Oh, right. So this literal translation would be really funny. In English, it sounds a bit funny, but in Greek, it was a term. When we prepared for this meeting, remember we talked about the picture, the monument, and I think I'm going to share this picture again because it's quite funny. Maybe you can tell a little bit about the story. I'll share the picture about the mistake made by Michelangelo. Now, I would like everyone to look at this monument. It's very famous. Maybe someone knows what is it. If you know, just unmute and tell me what is it. Do you recognize who it is? Maybe focus on the top of the statue, maybe. Benny, what do you think? Who do you think it is?
Yes, it's about Karen Orr.
Please explain in English first.
Okay, it's about the.
First of all, tell me who is it?
It's Moses,
Yes, it's a famous statue of Moses by Michelangelo. And what is the problem?
The problem is I don't know the word in English. It's go.
Okay, so I'll
know the word.
You see, this is the statue of Moses, and suddenly Michelangelo depicts him having horns on his head.
Horns.
What's the problem? So the thing is that in the Bible, in Hebrew, it says, and then he had a Keren. Keren in Hebrew means two things. It might mean a ray of light. Okay, there's one meaning, and another meaning is a horn. Okay, so he understood it the way he did, and he depicted him the way he did. You see, so this is a translation mistake, which became one of the most famous.
Another problem is or is light and leather.
Exactly, but it's
or with ein and different letters. Yeah.
There's another thing, and there's also like a catch. This ray of light, light in Hebrew is or, and if you spell
it, the ray of light.
Yes. So maybe I'll just write it on the board because otherwise it's probably a bit weird. So in Hebrew, it's written Keren or, which maybe was interpreted by him as horns of leather, which is a bit strange, but still makes sense. What it actually meant was ray of light. So this translation mistake became a famous statue. So this is, a very interesting topic that we can talk about for hours. I made a whole lesson dedicated to translation mistakes around the world. I think it was the funniest lesson we've ever had. Okay, so Salomon, back to
We're talking about the contextualization of a language.
Yeah.
So only knowing the language doesn't mean that you can literally understand the language.
So your knowledge of ancient languages helps you in your studies and maybe in
The
other
best things
things that you
about ancient languages, we have an exchange with American school, and there was a class there that actually learned ancient Latin, and they asked to translate a sentence, and they asked us to translate this sentence. We go by car to the sea. I try to explain that Latin in ancient Rome there were no cars. So that's the main problem when you're learning the language out of the context. We learn the language on ancient books that were written in this period. We learn about Iliad and Odysseus and everything in ancient Greek and in ancient Latin. Now they come to me and ask me to translate car in Latin, and there's no car. They intend for machine, but it's not a car.
Yeah, that's
it's a huge example of learning language out of the context.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, so now I guess it's a good time to talk a little bit about modern times and maybe talk a little bit about your current projects and maybe the way you use different languages in your projects. So let me just share the slides that you sent to me, and maybe you'll tell us a little bit about what you currently are busy with.
It's the power of language about explain actually what really happens in Israel to different countries from your point of view. And when you know their language and a different language, you can explain it's better because you can use actually the best words that best fit what we really want them to understand.
So what you have here on the picture on the right side is kind of a conference or something?
We have exchanges with, we have actually conference studying about the conflict and about economics problems and politics problems with India, South Korea, Germany, and Austria and Russia and more countries.
So interesting. Wow.
I used to accompany in Israel also delegation from the United Nations, from foreign embassies, from foreign armies, just to try to explain, because when you know their language, you can really make them understand what you mean in a better way. You know the way of sayings, and you don't use like can think about the word kill. Kill, you can translate it in Italian in 6 to 7 different words, and there is a difference between them. It's like the car in ancient Latin.
All these translations can influence very important decisions made political level, as far as I understand, right?
Right.
Okay. So now we're moving on to the slide, and can you tell us a bit?
During COVID, what happened that a lot of foreign people were stuck in different countries all over the world. Without a permission to come back, there were no flights. They tried to build a life. And the first thing they did actually was volunteering, because they just needed people to talk with. We just reached a lot of people coming from abroad and help them, like also to spend the time together in a wonderful way, in my opinion.
So what did you do exactly? We can see here
actually drafting people who don't know Hebrew. It happened in Israel. I'm speaking about Israel, and we get people that don't have any Hebrew words. They just were stuck here because their country closed its border and said, you have no flights.
You cannot fly.
Australia and Russia and China and an Indian person that came here for a trip or for holidays, and he stuck here for 3-4 months. That's what happened, and we try to help these people. Actually, I was contacted by a person from New Zealand, and New Zealand take really strict politics about flights and COVID.
They still have.
Yeah, and he was stuck in Israel 1 year.
Oh yeah, and that's a common story.
We contact him, we help him in learning Hebrew and meeting people. And without languages, actually, people usually think that when I know languages, it's easier for me to travel. It's easier for me to work, but it's easier for you to help. And
that's also.
Slide, for example, I volunteer in the Red Cross in Magen David Adom in Israel. And the first thing.
Let me just say a few words here, because maybe it's a bit unclear. In different countries, they have different organizations for emergency medicine. So in Israel, it's called Red Star of David. It's kind of similar to the Red Cross. It has the same, similar mission. So you volunteer in this organization, As what? What do you do exactly?
And like I just was telling you about using languages to help and not for yourself. And for example, Israel is made of, most of people are Olim or speak different languages.
Immigrants.
From immigrants, from Amharic, that Ethiopian dialects, to Russian, to English and different English. And actually I had patients that spoke Italian and Spanish from Argentina. And when you actually can talk to the patients, that when I just volunteer in ambulances and just say that when a person call an ambulance, he really don't feel good. And when he suddenly hear his language, it's like you see the light in his eyes. There's someone who will understand me. Maybe
he was relieved that he could speak about his problem in his native languages.
Obviously, most of the people can explain themselves in Hebrew and had a perfect
or in English.
But suddenly, when you listen to your mother language, it's totally different because it's your childhood language. It's the language you feel more comfortable in a moment that you are sick or you have a problem. So I really love to look like this, to look to this, like learning languages, not only for yourself, just to help, because we live in a world that maybe I can survive with only English. Maybe in some years I need to study Chinese too. But not think about the United Nations. The United Nations probably type in Chinese, in Arabic, in French, and that's all in English, and that's all. That are the languages of the world. So I can learn all these languages, and that's all.
Well, speaking of that, I have a question to you. The question is like this: if you had time, or maybe you do have a plan like this. If you had time, what language would you learn? What other language? Or maybe you would spend more time improving the languages that you already know. What would you do?
Now I'm learning Arabic.
As a part of your studies, like your BA or MA? Is it a BA or as a part of your BA? Okay,
studying Arabic and Quran and Arabic.
Do you mean there are two different types of Arabic? There's the spoken. I'm not. I know. I'm just talking about the difference between the spoken.
Yeah, the spoken one and the written one.
So which one are you learning?
The written one and the spoken one.
Both. Okay.
Yeah,
I see.
So it's really important to me, and now it's time to stop and touch the really important points that to make the language stronger and stronger. Because for me, knowing languages is also knowing culture. And my mother used to say that if you know a language when you can dream in it, when you can dream in this language. So when I come back to visit my family in Italy, I dream in Italian. Here I dream in Hebrew, and in the States when I visit my family, I dream in English. So when I dream in all the language I know, I move to another one. And
so then you'll be ready.
Points to understand that when you know a language and where you don't.
I see. And I think I also wanted to ask you a question about, can you teach me something I don't know? Remember we talked about a phrase you can teach me in a different language? So this is what we do it, I guess. This one, is that true? Is it right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So
this sentence is an ancient one. Actually,
can you read it in Greek?
Obviously, I'll read it in Greek.
Okay.
But first of all, I want to ask if some of you recognize some of the letters. Some of them you maybe meet them on math studies or maybe physics. Some are a little close to Russian.
Okay, guys, go for it. So if you recognize any of the letters, can you please raise your hand?
Not the easiest one.
Lambda.
Okay. Anything else?
Sigma, beta, alpha.
Sigma, beta, alpha, omega. Wow, many of them.
P, epsilon.
Epsilon.
For the Russian one, P is R. Something more? It's like V is N.
Eta. There's also eta.
Another example that people always used to say to me, it's for you is easier to learn Spanish because it's similar to Italian. And I can just tell you a word, salir. Salir in Italian is like going up on stairs.
Going up. Mm-hmm.
And in Spanish, like exit. It's like to exit. So maybe languages are similar in the way of writing, and of saying, but the meaning is totally different.
So different.
So I just want to tell them that it's easier to learn, but it's not the same. Like I'm learning on my own that Arabic people used to say that it's similar to Hebrew, it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe you can find some words, but it's not.
Yeah.
And you have to have a really profound knowledge to find how
Find the
languages are similar.
connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's study.
So the first one is al, as old, right?
Mm-hmm. Oden.
Day.
Al oden day para
ton. Vomon. Bastazein tas epinoias.
Vomon bastazei tas epinoias.
Right.
Okay.
So what does it mean? Don't take decision on the altar. And what they say that
what does it mean?
we are always told that in our world that things move fast and faster and faster. Like take decision on the moment.
Okay.
The Greek said no.
Don't do it.
Think about pros and cons. Take your decision, and for them, this is an important of the taking of decision in the classical, in the ancient culture. They used to say it, and Platon wrote about us, and all the most important philosophers wrote about decision. Why? We live in a world that people make decision, and the day after they said, "Oh, I make a mistake." And ancient Greek used to say, "You took a decision. Now you have to live with this." You have two options. If you start to cry, you will cry all your life. And the next time you have to take a decision, you won't trust yourself because you already did a mistake.
It's forever.
And if you take your decision and you continue to live, you say, okay, I did a mistake. I learned from this and now I continue.
Yeah. So I guess the ancient Greeks didn't have the Black Friday thing because they couldn't make decisions so fast. Okay.
The real meaning of this sentence, like don't take decision where things are occurring. Take decision before, and just don't be influenced so much by things that are happening around you, because most of them are not relevant about your decision. Don't waste time. It's like before election, you can see all the TVs are speaking about politics, and at the end of the day, you have politics all the day, and you don't know anything. You cannot really say which each party really think, but you heard hours of politics.
Yeah.
And that's what they mean. That's decide what is important to you and take decisions that are relevant for you.
Don't take decision on the altar. Well, that's really cool. Thank you so much. It was so interesting. So now, Salomon, I guess I would like to give the opportunity to everyone present today, to all the students present today, to ask some questions. So unmute your microphones and just say something. If you have a question, you're welcome to ask. And it could be about anything, about history, about family history, about ancient Greeks, making decisions, whatever you want. Okay, so Sasha?
Yeah, so good evening for everyone and good evening, Salomon. So I wanted to ask about, let's say, national self-identification, right? So it's interesting for me. What do you feel about your national,
identity?
Identity, yeah. So because of, as we heard, you have interesting family history, right? And you was born and you was turned then into another country and you was born in different cultures. So what do you think about and the second question is the language have some, let's say, meaning, not meaning, but somehow to change your national self-identification. So something about that.
Thank you, Sasha.
Thank you for your question. First of all, I'll answer to the second question about if learning another language will influence your entity and your
identity. I would say, I call it identity.
And way of you. Yeah. I can tell you that most, for example, in China, they learn English and they don't love the States. So you learn a language because maybe in our world, because you need it. And learning Latin and ancient Greek does actually influence you because you're learning it not on dictionaries or on internet. You're learning it really from sentences and from philosophies and from what really they think. They wrote the languages about they think the cultural point of view, like speaking, for example, about women and men and feminism and most of the things. For modern languages, I don't think. I think that the most you know, the better is, because Einstein said that he loves to believe that he's a citizen of the world. And at the same time, I just want to look to what happened. My father coming from Libya, my family, the family of my mother moving most of the country, and at the end I moved to Israel. No one forget about his own identity. And obviously I was always asked, oh, and if there is a war between Italy and Israel, with whom
which side will you take? Oh, come on.
And then we have different problems now. And we have Jews that fought in ancient Germany, and we have Jews that fought in France, and they fought one against each other. So the identity, I really believe that is the society you live in, is the country you live in, the house, the family, the values you receive from your family, from the school, and not about the languages, because the language is a different part. The language is important to understand other values, but I don't think that other languages change your values.
So I remember that once I was talking to someone in Russian, and then I switched into English, and they told us, oh, when you speak English, your face expression, like your facial expression changes a little bit. So do you feel like you're a different person when you speak a different language? And I took this question quite deeply, because I didn't think about this. And then, I think it does add something to you, but I do believe that it doesn't make you, get lost in different identities. I think it does open up something in your existing identity. And at least in my case, that's what I feel, that, the languages that you speak open up, another channel that you already have, will probably give you another tool that you need, or something like this, at least in my case. But
actually, Israel is a good example of this, because we have people coming from all over the world with all different languages, but at the end, everyone believe in the country, and they come at the beginning, at least, we have people coming. The army orders were given in 16 languages during the independence war.
Whoa! Wow! Yeah.
And
wow. Actually, I didn't know that. But
there are soldiers that were killed because the commanders didn't succeed to give the order in their language in the right time.
So they misunderstood. Oh my gosh.
So, and they have the same identity. They fought on the same side. So, as I told, I don't believe that learning other languages will affect your values or your identity. Identity is something more bigger than language.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so I think I would like to thank Salomon. It was very, very interesting, the whole story, and very inspiring. And so thanks for being with us today. And again, if anyone has any remarks or anything, you're welcome to do it now, because I think we are almost about to finish. And I just wanted, before we finish, a little, it isn't related to languages directly, but it has to do with all this multicultural topic that we discussed. So again, when you choose a TV show, which one would you choose? Or if there's a TV show you love right now and you watch right now, so tell us, what is it?
Well, I don't have time for TV shows, but it depends on the country you live in. I was in Italy a few months ago and just watched Italian bullshit, and here you watch Israeli bullshit. It's not a good example.
Okay.
But for example, if you just asked about that we are told in most of the world's universities that you can access to knowledge. You cannot access to knowledge without knowing English. And at the same time, I'm sure that we are missing a lot of knowledge because of English.
Oh.
And we are missing a lot of knowledge because we are actually reading what someone who knows English translated and wants us to know.
There's a term for it. It says lost in translation. So what you're saying is don't get lost in translation. Okay, Salomon, this is spoiling my agenda. I want people to learn English. Anyway, okay, tea or coffee?
Whoa, tea.
Just say tea or tea. Okay, book in Latin.
It's not Italian. It's not Israeli. What?
I see. It's neither Italian nor Israeli. Okay.
It's like chai for mom.
Chai, absolutely. That's exactly what I was looking for. Okay, book in Latin or book in English?
Wow, there are no more book in Latin. if you can find a new book in Latin.
Oh, do you mean that you've read all the old ones?
Not all the old one, but the most important. But you learn if reading an English book, for example, just reading for reading. Reading a Latin book is reading for learning. It's totally different.
Okay.
I cannot read a story in Latin and just believe that's a story. I'll try to search what is their message, what they wanted to tell me. Because, writing, it's not like books now and internet and knowledge. So you don't even had books, and you had few words to say a lot of things. So there are no simple words.
So I see that. So you feel like it's a totally different things, and you feel difficulty to choose between this and that. I got it. Maybe you should check out old Anglo-Saxon, because it turns out that they used to write fantastic jokes, and I have recently discovered that there's a huge collection of jokes and riddles in Anglo-Saxon language. So maybe there's something you should look into. Okay. Favorite sports?
Oh, basketball.
Basketball. Okay. All right.
My mom tried to send me to learn hockey.
Didn't work.
I played 6 years. It worked. But,
it did.
The problem is the cultural one. We don't have ice.
Oh, yeah. Neither in Italy.
No in Italy and no in Israel.
Nor in Israel. I see. Okay. Thank you, Salomon.
Thank you, Salomon.
Yep, thank you, Tanya. Thank you, Salomon.
Fascinating.
Thank you very much. That was
It was very interesting.
Cool. Oh, Asa. Good to see you.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, guys, it was nice to have you all here. And yeah, don't miss next month. I also have a surprising guest for us. And Salomon, thank you very much for your time. It was
Thank you
very
for having
inspiring.
me.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep, thanks a lot.
Thank you for having me and for your time.
Okay. Goodbye.
Yeah, bye.